You are a creator. You create your career, your business. You create a family. You create your future. On the Results Driven Life by Design broadcast, get ready to hear from people from all walks of life and how they overcame the odds to create a life led by purpose and vision. Here's your host, Chris Earley.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's broadcast. I always begin by reminding you that your skills, your experiences, and your talents have been given to you for a reason. No one else has that unique combination, and no one else has your voice. You have a message that the world needs to hear. And so as you listen to today's show, I invite you to a greater vision for your life that resonates beyond what you do, but why you do it. Now, on today's show, I am very pleased to welcome Massachusetts personal injury attorney Chris Earley and our longtime client and friend. Chris is the founder and CEO of the Earley Law Group in Boston. Beyond practicing law, Chris is also an author, a speaker, legal columnist, podcast host, and a business coach teaching his fellow attorneys about the business side of running a law firm. That's not all. He's been named Massachusetts Super Lawyer multiple times, which is one of the highest honors an attorney can achieve. He writes a monthly column for the American Bar Association, as well as for Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly. And he produces and publishes 3 different newsletters each month. On top of all his legal work, his practice is very active in partnering with many local community organizations to help those in need. However, I know that his greatest and proudest achievement is his family in being a father to his 2 young, very adorable children. So now, as one of his longtime marketing partners and his newsletter publisher, I have personally had the privilege of seeing how he has grown his law firm from a solo practice to a team of over 10 people. He has built a robust business brand, which he fearlessly integrated with his personal brand. This has all culminated in him spending the last 2 years writing a memoir of his life called Scaling the Wall, One Man's Journey of Healing Childhood Trauma to Find Fulfillment and Success, which was released last month. Chris, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the show, and congratulations on this milestone achievement.
Yeah, you're amazing. That was a really kind introduction. No pressure, right?
You know what?
No,
I know you're good for it.
no, I appreciate you. It's been really good to get to know you. You've helped my business so much. I have a lot of respect for you. So I really
I
value our friendship and partnership.
Same here, and I appreciate you saying that. So, Chris, I typically dive into the deep end with my guests right at the start, and most of whom are entrepreneurs or professional practice owners like yourself. I ask them questions about things that they typically don't share in their marketing, things like their biggest challenge, biggest shift, most embarrassing flaw. But you already talked about those things. You are prolific in your marketing and in sharing your wins and your fails, regardless of how embarrassing it is. So I read your memoir, and there's one particular story, and I won't spoil it for those who've yet to read it, but it was when your son was still a newborn. And I'll be frank with you, it was an epic failure as a new dad and a husband. Like, I was shocked. I was shocked. I was actually so pissed for your wife that, like, TBH, I might have called you a bad name or 2 in my head. So kudos to you for sharing that. Now, here's why I mention it, and what I want to know from you. At some point in your marketing and in your brand development, whether you realized it or not, you became very transparent and very authentic in the things that you were saying. I mean, from the start, when we launched your newsletter, it was very personal. So here's my question. Was this quality of being fully transparent a decision you made? Was there a shift that took place? And the reason I ask is because a lot of people who are building their businesses, including some of our own clients, are very hesitant in being transparent and incorporating more of their personal lives into their marketing. But you seem to do it effortlessly. Can you tell me about that? And what would you say to those who resist doing that?
Great question. I'm a big fan, as you know, right? Knowing me, I think we've known each other for 6 years now. Authentic marketing, right? Like you referenced. So I think that's the most powerful and easiest networking. I find it to be effortless because it's like you just being who you are, right? So I just want to share a quick story that I think may help the listener. I was at a legal conference in Atlanta just like 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, and the speaker got up on stage. He's like, share your story, share your story on social. And I said, okay, this is new, but whatever. You know me, Kia, always trying to create opportunities, always trying to find new channels to grow my business. I said, all right, I'll share my story. So I went to my hotel room and I wrote a social media post about my story. I never really share my story with friends, family, even. Well, family knows my story, but friends, my wife knows my story, but I never shared it publicly. Anyway, the next morning I hit send. I composed this story about my story on Instagram, and the outpouring was incredible. And I was at this airport in Atlanta. I started crying because people were like hit by the honesty. My wife shared the story on her social, and that was when the dam sort of broke, right? And a lot about marketing. It's not like an overnight thing. You have to sort of like chip at the dam, chip at the dam. And I'm always chipping every day, but I found that when I shared the story, my life got better, Kia. My
Mm.
marriage got better, my business got better, my leadership, everything like went up when I was real and kind of naked. Like, this is who I am. I literally wrote a book about my most shameful parts about myself, which are too many to list. But I think it's a superpower. Everyone has a story. So I encourage you, let the world hear that. Um, to the extent that you're comfortable with it. And I think if you start to lean into that, you're going to find that the world will respond. It'll resonate. That's to me the best marketing, is being who you are, right? That's what people want to hear.
Absolutely. Well, being who you are, and I would add to that, that's what makes you unique. That's nobody else has that story. So the biggest challenge in marketing is how to step outside the competition and not sound like everybody else. And everybody has a story that is not like everybody else. And so when you bring that in, you automatically become different. And and not only that, but you become relatable, you become
Mm,
approachable. People don't put you on some pedestal like, oh, he's like this, fancy lawyer who's really expensive. You come right
hmm
down to their level with these stories. There really is a human element that that you every, like you said, it's a superpower that everybody has. Did you get any negative feedback? Because I think that's what people worry. They can get like, you know, 100 likes and hearts, which is like nice, but or even more. But the two that are critical, like that's all you.
mm.
What do you have? Did you experience any of that?
No, no. And to be frank, I don't even care at this point, because if 95% of the people find value from it, that's good enough for me. But no, it's hard to ridicule the person who's exposing themselves. It's like it's kind of hard to like shame that person, because like this dude
It's
is just
true.
out there like sharing his most shameful stuff. Like, not a lot of people want to sort of critique that. So I find the opposite. People are very supportive, and it resonates. You and I are you especially are a Dan Kennedy student, and he talks about affinity. Well, this stuff we're talking about, we haven't spent any money. This is just like authentic marketing, just putting a post on social. This is all free stuff. Being yourself. I always think about that affinity. Dan Kennedy preaches, right? It's legit. People want to do business. They know that I can trust. You create some affinity with them. Maybe they can relate to my story on some level. Maybe their cousin had addiction issues. Maybe their friend has been down homeless. Who knows, right? That's like that's authentic marketing on steroids. Then it's like you're just creating such value, and you're hopefully inspiring people to share their stories. So I can't espouse enough, Kia, just like being who you are. And when you start to do that, it gets easier. And then that's why I put out a book about it. It's like I'm at that point, just like let it rip.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
see how it goes. And no matter how it goes, I don't really care, because that's the story, and I live it. And it's all good how the world responds, because honestly, like, it doesn't even matter, to be honest.
Yeah. And so I love what you said. Two things about that I really want the listeners to know is one, as you grow, and even if you don't, you're always going to get haters. And you know what?
Mm,
You've got to develop a thick skin, and it's got to be because I'm growing, I'm getting any hate. And I just read in Dan
mm.
Kennedy's newsletter, he was like, I haven't pissed enough people off today, so I need to go piss off some people. So if you haven't pissed
Absolutely.
off somebody, you're not doing your job because again, you're
Absolutely.
sounding like everybody else. So that's point number one. Point number two is I want to make sure that the audience understands that you don't put yourself out there and become authentic for the sake of like, what is the next marketing that I can do that's going to make an impact? It's this idea of bridging your purpose in the thing that you're doing every day, right? So your law firm is an extension of who you are, not the other way
Right.
around. And
Right.
so in the work that we do, the brand development, we find that those who can bridge the gap from what they do day to day in their business to generate income and whatever they do and what they do in their life, the more they can bridge it, the more fulfilled and happy and successful they are.
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said. I hope people are taking notes here, Kia. That's some gold right there.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing. So it's not just a marketing tactic. It really isn't. It's a path of true fulfillment and finding purpose, which is really what we're talking about.
And Kia, that's right. People will sniff that out. They'll sniff out the inauthentic, and they'll critique the hell out of you, right? So the world, whether you're in person speaking to a group or speaking virtually to people on the internet, like they will sniff it out, and they'll destroy you if you're fake.
You're absolutely right.
Don't be fake because everyone's gonna know, and they're gonna know the real. So when you're real, it's like, all right, what's this dude all about? You know, what's this all about? Yeah,
that's right. Don't be in my Gen Z kids lingo. Don't be the pick me person. Don't just like start saying things just so you can pick you. So absolutely, authenticity. Yep. So Chris, I want to talk a little bit about your journey in growing your business, your law firm, and then I have some questions for you about your memoir. Yeah, and so like I said, I might have said I like to jump into the deep end of cold, icy waters. Or it's more like I stand behind my guests and I push them in first.
That's the only way to do it.
But you live in Boston. You're used to frigid temperatures.
So. Oh, yeah.
All right. So many of our listeners who listen to the show, they already know the challenges of running and growing a successful business. And you've obviously overcome many of them to get to where you are. But tell me, what continues to be a challenge for you that tests your resolve over and over again?
I think a lot of people can relate to this. I'm really impatient, and I think it can turn people off because if you're almost everyone listening to this is ambitious and driven, right? You have to sort of temper your ambition with reality that like Rome wasn't built in a day, right? These things take time. I started my newsletter with you. It's not like first month, like my phone's ringing off the hook. It took time to gain traction. I had to be patient. I could have pulled the pin 6 months in, said, "Key, it's not working. Let's cancel this thing." No, like you got to stay into these. You have to be patient. So I have learned as you grow, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, the hits get harder, the punches get a little bit more severe. And the most successful people that I study, that we both study, they weather the blows and they keep going and they get more stamina when they're in the ring. They can go longer, longer into the bout. These challenging times make them stronger. I have found that things get harder because you have more like sophisticated problems. I think our friend Ben Glass says, the problems back in the day were hard, but these are better problems. So at the end of the day, these are probably more desirable problems to have, but they're more nuanced and challenging in their own way. But I would encourage, learn from mistakes. Don't be impatient. I think the success game is a long game, right? There's no destination, but be patient as much as you can. That's my Achilles heel, Kia. Like I got to work on that so much, but you know how it is. You're driven, you're ambitious, your hair is on fire, but not everything goes according to your speed. So you have to just sort of keep going, persist, and be patient. I think that's a big lesson I've learned the hard way, for sure.
That's absolutely right. That's a really good point. And I was reminded of Dan Kennedy, both of our mentors, and he's known as the curmudgeon, right? And he's just kind of grumpy and he has no patience, but truly he does. Like for those who know him behind, that's partly a persona that he has of, the competence of everybody around him and how he's not patient with them. Like you said, they're not going at the speed. But everybody has to cultivate that. And one of the ways I found for me personally was that you just sort of trust that things are going to unfold the way they are. So if some wrench falls into your plans, there's that idea of actually plan B was better, but I wouldn't have known it if plan A didn't, like you said, didn't get hit or shot through. So there's you sort of also trust that when something doesn't go right, rather than blowing up and getting angry about it, oh, maybe there's a better plan. So
Percent. Be adaptable.
yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. So here's my next question. Besides your family, what person has influenced you the most in your life?
Besides my family, I would say a lawyer. I'll tell you this. This is who it is. It's a lawyer who I met after law school. I couldn't get a job. He was decades older than me, and he took me in and sort of showed me some things. And that opportunity, we had this sort of a quasi partnership, and that fizzled. But it was not acrimonious, and I had to start my practice right then and there. It was the best thing. So he really helped me get started. And his name is Robert Graves. He's about 85 years of age. He's still living, thankfully. And he really helped me. And I think about him every day. I think it's really important, Kia, that you thank people who helped you. We stand on other people's shoulders, right? And so I stood on his shoulders, and things, you just talked about this, things working out, right? They generally work out. I would encourage the audience, write a thank you card to people who have helped you, send that you've stood on their shoulders and benefited from it. That Robert Graves was really big for me professionally. That's the biggest influence outside of my family, I could say.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. I mean, you never know the impact you have. I mean, maybe he never realized it aside from you mentioning it to him, but to him, you were just this, kid who just graduated law school and he just did what he was doing. And look what he did.
Yes,
And I think we all have that impact on people. Just be you and do what you do. And one day, yeah, that's amazing.
I love
that. Mm-hmm. So, all right, here's the last question before I jump into your memoir. What's the one business secret that if you shared with me, you'd have to kill me?
Oh, wow. I have to. You meant deep end. Wow! Exclamation point. No, but like I love that, but like they are just. I'm going to be unconventional and say there are no secrets, and I've learned that, right? As you gain success, the most successful people just they persist, Kia. Like, and you just that's the secret. Is there is no secret. Just like get off. I keep talking about boxing. I don't know why it's in a boxing motif type of thing. Get off the mat, like get picked up and pick yourself up and just keep going. Like that memoir, right, that you referenced, like was the hardest thing I've had to do, I think. It sucked every single time I did it. And it was so hard, but I just did it. And now I'm starting my second book, which would be more for kind of lawyers. But if you do hard things, you will be rewarded. Look how much we keep talking about Dan Kennedy, but he's, I think, kind of how we met generally. Think about how prolific he is. How many times he didn't want to write, but he got up at 7 a.m. and he wrote. And our mutual friend, Charlie Mann, Charlie was very and is very big in my life professionally. He references the Dan Kennedy saying, which I think about every single day. And that saying is something effective. Send one ship out to sea every day, whether it's a piece of content, a card, get a review, like some ship, put it out to sea every day, like on lock. Don't take days off. That's why successful people are successful, because they do that stuff. And I try to emulate that and just, and try to put stuff out as much as possible, because the average bear won't do the work, I find, and I'm too dumb to quit. So I just like keep creating content. And I've learned, Kia, as you get better at this stuff, right? Like you kind of like sharpen your saw and you learn like better writing, better social media, better, I have my own podcast, better podcast delivery, all these little things. You sharpen your saw, you get a little bit more like, I guess, sophisticated with your approach. You become more equipped, more competent. You start to separate from those who aren't putting in those reps in the gym. And that's where I think great success lies. And that's what I'm chasing. That's what I'm always going after. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I agree with you. It's the idea of resilience. And I actually, the last episode that I recorded, it was a solo one where I talked about the top 3 things that impacted me in 2024. And the last thing that I shared, I said, if you're not seeing any success, here's what you do. And this was my advice. show up. Show up
Mm.
anyway. Just show up. Send that email. Show up. Make that phone call. Show up. Do that marketing. Come up with that idea. That's it. Even if you're not seeing anything, just show up. And it's like the same idea of send a ship out. Even if you're like,
Mm.
I don't know where it's going, it's not coming back, send
Mhm.
that ship out. Right. That
You
truly
have
is.
to. You have to. You know, you work with a lot of lawyers. I'm interested to see if I could ask you a quick question. Like, what do you see holding people back? Like, if they don't send those ships, is it like fear of rejection? I don't know what to talk about. Like, what are some things that you see that's sort of getting people's way on producing stuff?
Thanks for asking that. One of them you alluded to was developing marketing content. And
Mm.
it's hard crossing that challenge of what do I talk about, what do I write about, or they kind of they get a little burst of energy and then they fizzle out. It's producing the content because we're in a content consuming um, world right now. That's
Mm.
what it's all about, and you have to figure out how to sound different. So being able to produce content that gets your attention is really the biggest obstacle that I find for the attorneys. And then they busy themselves, and the other thing is that they're so busy doing the work of the work and taking care of clients. It's that we call it the entrapment cycle where you do your
Mm.
marketing, you get a lot of clients, you get too busy, you stop marketing, then the clients go down, you do a lot of marketing, you get busy, and it's
Mm.
just this like cycle that they can't push past. So
Mm.
that's what I find. And it
Yeah.
does require thick skin to really take the risks, hire the people, do something different, do something different.
I love
So
that. Take a risk, right? Take a
yeah,
risk.
yeah, jump
Take
out of that
take
cycle.
yeah. Cycle is a good way to put it. It makes a lot of sense. It resonates with me a lot for sure.
Which leads me to my next question, actually, which now I'm gonna jump into your memoir.
Okay.
I'm not gonna spoil anything. It's the idea of doing something different to get out of that cycle that you've been. Okay. So
Mm.
in the epilogue of your book, you say
Hmm.
this, and I'm going to read it. You say, during my 30s, I experienced a shift in family dynamics as I navigated my healing journey. I've learned that healing can sometimes lead to a distancing from old patterns, like breaking out of that cycle. I love my family just as much as I did before I began healing. But my relationship with them has changed. What I experienced throughout my 30s taught me that when we undergo significant life shifts, our relationships may evolve too. As someone who's gone through a healing journey herself, I resonate with that. In fact, one of the biggest obstacles in breaking through success barriers, so for you to get to the next level of your success, typically for women, but for men too, is a fear of losing relationships. In fact, it's something I go deeper into in a previous episode of my podcast with Mandy Ellison. We talk about that being like a big barrier for people to do the things they need to do to succeed because they fear losing deep, meaningful relationships that they have. But and I know that when we grow as people, whether that requires healing, learning, making changes, whatever it may be, when there's a significant breakthrough, we become different people. I mean, that's the goal. And sometimes the
Mm.
people closest to us don't like it, right? Or
Yes.
it messes up the dynamic, like you said, threatens that relationship. So for some people, we stop the growth. We're not willing to risk that relationship. Now, in the epilogue, you didn't really go into detail about how things changed. Are you
Mm.
willing to share about how that growth and healing impacted your family dynamics?
To be honest, I can't get into. There's a lot in the book I couldn't share, to be totally frank with you, because I don't know if it would be fair. I can say this to you in response to that is that talk about relationships. My relationship with my wife, Rory, is what got me. Because you read the book, and I'm so grateful you
Yeah.
read that book. You have no idea what it means to me, Kia, sincerely. But that relationship got me on a different path in life. So that my existing relationships with my family were sort of being challenged and tested, and there was a fraying, right? But this is part of life. Like when you grow, like you're gonna, even your family you can lose, and there's so much I don't even share. I'm gonna write another book about that stuff at some point, like when the time is right. But you know when you grow, like you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna, like, you're leveling up, so you're hitting these different points, which means people will, some will stay with you and some will leave. some of your team members who are on your bus today, right? Talking to the practitioner, listening, they're not going to be with you on your next level of growth. And that's a good thing. That's healthy because you're growing and they're going to grow somewhere else. But like, you have to be willing. A really good book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I think that's by Marshall Goldsmith. I want to say the name. I hope I get it right. And so you have to be willing to, some of your closest family relationships. I mean, like I have a very unusual story. You read the book, you understand Kia. But that was unfortunately a consequence of me wanting to live a better life for my kids and my wife. And so that wasn't by intention that those relationships got frayed, but it was an inevitable development when you evolve and you sort of get to a different level, not just levels, not just professional, but personal levels of growth. When I met you in 2019, I was a totally different guy. Like I wasn't talking about this stuff, right? I talk in the book about meditation, journaling. A lot of stuff is I'm a work in progress. But like when I first met with you, I was a different guy. I want to share a quick funny story that we had together when I first reached, and this is instructive for the listener. When I first reached out to you, I had to schedule a call with him. Like, I got to schedule a call. Who does she think she is? Like, what's up with this? And now that's my bread and butter. You don't take unscheduled phone calls. You plan your calendar out because you read Dan Kennedy time management stuff, so you understand your time is a depleting asset. So I think about that story, and then that was one of my best decisions. Was taking Ben Glass's advice and contacting you because you get it and I appreciate you. And I'm not trying to be all, softy here. I'm just saying that like the guy you met was a lot different. I'm really glad I met you because you've been part of my journey. You've been publishing the journey in my newsletter. So you've been part of this whole deal. So for you to read the book means a lot to me. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, absolutely. It's been so much fun. And like you said, we learn most by observing how other people do. And, we've had that in our lives too, whether it's Ben Glass or Dan Kennedy or others or each other. That's the value of community and staying connected, which your newsletter does. But
well
so
said.
Honestly, Chris, the process of personal growth is so multi-layered. And for those who are serious about building a business or building a family, it's absolutely vital. And let me add this. I'm just leaving this point of losing relationships and changing relationships. Sometimes I find that what happens, so when there's this principle of when you let go of something, whether it's a relationship that was meaningful to you, you set it free, right? And there's a freedom that occurs for you and for that person to walk into the next phase of their life. Now, the other person may or may not, and that's not your control, but you have to set them free to do that. So there's that idea. And there's also, I'm a woman of faith. I read the scriptures, and there's a principle in the scriptures that said anyone who's willing to lose, mother, father, daughter, wife, willing to let it all go for the greater thing, more shall be given back to them. So it's a ancient, truth that maybe, I don't know, I just wanted to put that out there. I didn't want to leave that point untied. But there really is so much to personal growth, and you simply cannot stay the same person you were 5 years ago or even a year ago. And I wish we had time to dive into all those aspects. I mean, we really touched on a lot, which I love. But there's one more thing that was fascinating in your memoir, and I wanted to ask you about. In the book, there were several instances where you had a very real and emotional conversation with your dad, who had already passed away. Yep. Can you tell me about that? I mean, in some ways, very spiritual, and maybe there's some psychology behind it. But some might think that, like, you've lost your mind. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, that's true.
What do you think about that? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
I thought it was profound. Personally, I thought it was profound, but I want to hear your perspective.
Well, I appreciate that. So it was this, as I was going through this, and I encourage the audience, to pick up the book Scale on the Wall, because I hope you find value if you've been through adversity, challenge, even trauma. I think it'll resonate with you on some level that I hope is helpful for your life. That's why I wrote the book, not to make money. I'm going to lose money I'm going to lose money in the book, and I could care less, because like these conversations is what energizes me and gets me happy, right? And so the book was worth it just for this stuff, right? These conversations that help people, I believe, because our conversation right now, Kia, is resonating with a lot of people right now. So the conversations with my father are just sort of like it was sort of like subconscious stuff going through my 30s of not wanting to screw my life up like my father did, and knowing like you can't do what he did. You have to go the other way. Like you can't let that stuff hold you back. And so it was just sort of this dialogue that reoccurred throughout the book of just me realizing like I got a lot I could lose here. I got a wife and two kids I could lose if I don't get my act together here. And so it was that his failure was always like front of my mind when I was going through things and seeking therapy, that I knew what not to do, which was to lead a life of failure. So it's very instructive. Sometimes our best lessons are not what to do, what not to do. And so there was these very intimate, kind of man to man dialogues that I wrote that didn't occur because he was dead at the time, and it's dead. But it's this what was going through my mind personally, like, all right, I don't want to do that. And it was 10 years, looking back 10 years ago at the man I was growing into, and things that were on my mind was to not be like my dad. My dad popping into the story was this sort of presence of, dude, what are you doing? You're gonna fail. Let's get our act together. And that was the the relationship of,
Love that.
of healing by not repeating the mistakes, because I could have repeated his stuff. And who loses? My wife and kids. Then who loses? My grandkids. It's like this cyclical stuff, Kia, right? So I'm doing my darndest to stop that cycle. And like I have so much work to do. This is not like no, like, I figured this stuff out. I'm a flawed guy, work on this stuff all the time. This is so challenging to be, you know, to to not um to not be pulled, because I was brought up in a very traumatic environment and that weighed me down. It's sometimes hard not to like be pulled into those negative thought patterns and those catastrophic thought patterns, like, oh, my law practice, it's gonna, go bad. This client's gonna fire me. They're gonna sue me. This team member's gonna leave. Like my catastrophe brain would do that stuff. The harder for me today is like thinking differently. Do you meditate or no, or journal?
Oh, 100%, all of it.
Love it. All right. So you get it. So like meditation, it quiets the noise. You hear those crazy thoughts, like that was a crazy thought I just thought. I'm not going to jump on that train, right? So that's, to me, the challenge is like growing and not ever, letting the train get off the tracks. But each day you get a little stronger. We talk about doing the reps. You go to the gym, you do the reps, and you get a little stronger. So the meditation, I keep talking about it, Kia, because like it's been so helpful to get my ship, my ship righted, the direction I want to, navigate it to.
Yeah, and to me, there's 100 different ways to meditate, and
Totally.
the whole point of it, and you have to find a way, and that helps you accomplish distancing yourself from the thoughts, from
Yes.
the emotions, so that you can be the observer, right? Be the
Yes.
observer of those things. And that's what, and it seems to me, having those conversations with your dad in your mind made you an observer. I think, personally, I think there was deeper spiritual impact there, but in terms of sort of that neuroscience, the psychology of it,
Yes.
you become an observer of those. And that is the most powerful thing anyone can do, is to just separate that person that keeps running those programs in your head. And that's when you can empower yourself to reprogram. And like you said, put the new thoughts in your mind, or like reframe those thoughts in some way.
100%.
And that truly is, to me, that's the essence of meditation. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's kind of, like you said, it's kind of like softy, fluffy things that, big, powerful attorneys don't do, but it really is such a key thing for growth. So, I acknowledge you for talking about that and promoting it the way that you do. It's a big deal.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's not just about, everyone wins when you get your thoughts under control. Like if I go to the office next week and Key, I'm like, oh, let's get this done. Like, what's going on here? Like, if I'm a hot mess, what are they going to absorb? Like my energy. So no matter what, I encourage the listener, right? when you walk in your office, how you act and behave is very informative for your culture, for your team, whether you have one person working with you or 800, right? You have to be like, cool. You're going to get hit. I've dealt with so many challenges, Kia, and everyone on this call. We've all dealt with challenges, everybody. But you have to be able to be cool. In meditation, you recognize, okay, this is impermanent. This catastrophe, whatever it is that you're making a big deal out of, which is really nothing. I got to recommend this book. I don't know if I've gotten to Stoicism. It's The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. It's so freaking good. I have my son reading it. It's really cool.
Oh,
So just but like whatever it is, maybe you like to like play archery and that quiets your mind, like whatever, it's chess, whatever pulls you out, because everyone here has a lot of balls in the air we're juggling. We have a lot of activity. You got to be, most of us, a lot of us are probably parents, right? Kids can be stressful. If I'm losing, my mind and going crazy, like what does that show to my kids? Like I've seen that on the receiving end. It's not a good look. So I got to be cool because our kids are always watching. So I try to just be cool. And I find, Kia, the cooler you can get, the more opportunities you can take advantage of, the more clarity you have to say no to bad opportunities that maybe don't advance you and your family forward in this life. So just whatever you got to do, the listener, quiet that noise. That's where the good stuff is. Then you can really thrive, I feel like.
100%. And that kind of reminds me of advice that I actually gave it at a talk I gave at Ben's office last year when I was trying to help some of the attorneys who came, discover what their uniqueness and what makes, their personal brand, what makes them them. And what I discover is that, in this marketing, this hyper marketing, numbers game, everybody's up here in their head and everything
Mm,
is like illogical. Everything's about the thinking, what makes sense, what's this rule and what's this number. And we have a hard time moving from that down here where we
mhm.
quiet all of that and what really feels right and makes sense from an intuitive standpoint, because that is key. And I feel like that's where you really excelled in, really bringing out the things that were, you know outside of your head and in your body and in your heart and in your soul, and look at where you are now. So just, for those who are like, oh, what's the tracking, what's the metrics, what's the KPI, it's like, just step back every now and then
Yeah,
and just see how it feels and go with your gut sometimes, right?
I love it. That's so smart. What you just said was really cool because we talk about authentic marketing. That's not like calculated, like, oh, I'm going to get an ROI on this thing. No, it's like, I'm going to put some stuff out there. I'm going to let it fly. And if people like it, cool. If not, that's cool too, because this is me, who I am. But like, you don't want everyone to like you, right, Kia? Like, you don't want 1,000 raving fans, or I'm sorry, 1,000 people who kind of like you. You want like 10 raving fans who think,
Yes.
you are the best thing ever and are going to tell 10,000 people. So, this is about, Dan Kennedy building a tribe, affinity, all this stuff. But like, don't try to please everyone. I feel like attorneys were so boxed in. And this is what my second book, I just started the process, is about, is like doing it differently to have a better life. Um, is what I'm writing about now, because I think that's so important. But you're talking about heart-based marketing. Is there any better marketing than that, as opposed to like, yeah, tracking numbers? Like there was a time and a place for that. Yeah. But like, are you relatable? Like you just said before, are you like a relatable attorney who can like get on their level? Or are you just like talking about these $100 words that no one knows what they mean anyway? That's going to turn people off and it's going to frustrate your career. Get on their level. And heart-based marketing, I think we're onto something here. What do you think?
Right. And it's not that don't do your tracking, don't do your metrics, don't
Right.
do those
Of
KPIs,
course.
but don't just do those and throw away the others. And even now in this like oversaturated multimedia marketing environment, what we find, and I want to, make sure I say this because it's a question that I'm still getting, is, well, how do I know that my newsletter is working? Or how do I know that this, direct, we were print marketing, that. How do I know this is
Yeah.
working? How do I know that is working? And it's come to the point now where it really is a challenge to get direct
Yeah.
metrics into the effectiveness of a newsletter, of a direct mail piece,
Yeah.
of maybe your magazine, or because what happens is they'll get it again, they'll go on your website, they might follow your social media,
Yep.
and then like 3 months later, 4 months later, they'll go to your website and contact you. You're like, well, how'd you hear about us? Well, I don't know. You're just everywhere all the
Yes.
time. And so what we tell our clients is yeah, there may be some direct, relationship with the particular marketing you do that you can track. But what you want to see is a general uptick in referrals, in cases, in your revenue, even in engagement. I know you can't bank engagement, but people calling you be like, wow, that was a really great article. Thanks. Like those are things that, it's called fuzzy marketing. So I don't want people to be hung up on, well, am I going to get direct results? I mean, has that been your experience with you've
Yeah.
been doing your newsletter for
100%. Yeah, it's just another line in the water, and it's a big line in your marketing because you can't just rely on your newsletter. You can't just rely on PPC. This is like a multi-pronged attack, right? Of approach to gaining attention. We said earlier that's really like the currency is attention nowadays, right? You said there's some word content
Okay.
consuming society, but like attention is the currency. How can you increase your attention to your brand? Because you have a brand, right? You're trying to get eyeballs on that brand. You want the people to call you, but a newsletter is a slow burn because it's not this quick shot in the arm like we talked about at the very beginning of the podcast. Like I've been doing for 6 years now. It's work. I got to create content, but like it works and it's effective. You don't have to. I don't think you have to create all the content yourself, right? Like there's other ways to do it that you guys offer over there, which is fantastic. But this is showing up differently. I mean, how many lawyers do a newsletter? Not enough, not a lot. And those that do, they literally stand out differently. So it's a long game. Just like that's what we're talking about today. This patience thing. I encourage everyone. It's long. It's decades. Let's play the long game, and that's how I
That's
think we
right.
get the big wins.
That's right. And there's this idea now, and with this idea of there's so much, noise everywhere. It's the idea of time on brand. How much time are people spending on your brand in these different? And the more you can increase that time with different modalities, different content, visual, whatever, the more successful you're going to be. But it's like you said, it's the concept of time on brand. So
Yeah.
that's I think there's some really important points.
And I'm with you, but why should they stick around on your brand? Like, why are you different? What's interesting? So I have kind of an odd story. So I just lean into that. And some people like it, some don't, but like it's all good, right? But like time on brand, I love that. So like why should they stop, and look at your stuff? Like what's so different about you? Find that because you have uniqueness, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing. There's something unique about you. And you have to really leverage that because like otherwise I think you're being kind of fake, right? If you're not being like your true self. And then again, we talked to people could sniff it out. It's doomed to fail.
100%. 100%. So, Chris, we're coming kind of to the end of our time. Let me ask you one more question, and then
Sure.
we'll wrap it up and find out how people can connect with you after that. What advice would you give to your younger self? Kind of loaded, but
No, I like that. I would um professionally, I would have done the stuff that I'm doing now a long time ago. So learn from my mistakes, right? Like network, do a newsletter, meet a lot of lawyers, go to conferences, right? That's when my career changed. I started going to conferences, get speaking opportunities, like hustle. I was kind of arrogant when I got out of law school, Key. I thought like my phone, I was doing yellow pages advertising. This is like 85 years ago. The yellow pages were a thing. And the phone would ring, but I just sort of like got complacent. And like you have to, it's so saturated now, especially in Boston. Most markets are totally oversaturated with lawyers. You have to sort of stand out. So if I could go back in time, 20 years ago when I started, I would have networked more frequently. Yeah, that's investment that you keep priming that pump. I think it pays big dividends for sure.
I love that answer because truly the biggest asset any business has is their pool of potential buyers, or in your case, clients
Yes.
and referral
Yeah,
sources. That's it. Nothing, you can have nothing else, but if you can have everything else, but if you don't have that, you got nothing.
absolutely. Absolutely. You got to get out there, prime the pump.
That's right. That's right. Chris, thank you so much. This is such an enjoyable conversation. Truly, truly, I enjoyed it. And I think that our audience, our listeners, will have gotten a lot of value out of it. And what is the best way you'd want some people to connect with you? I mean, there's lots of different ways, but what would you say is maybe the best way?
Yeah, I'll give a couple. So my cell phone, I would love to hear from you. You're probably dealing with stuff that I'm dealing with on some level. I'm sure we can help each other out to grow. So call me, please. My cell is area code 617-956-2501, 617-956-2501. Secondly, I have a newsletter, an e-newsletter that hits There are 800 lawyers throughout the country that are on this newsletter list. I encourage you to sign up. Simply go to, it's totally free. I get nothing other than the enjoyment of helping, to be honest, right? I get joy from that and distributing this to people. It's if you go to practicetipoftheweek.com, sign up. I'd love for you to receive my newsletter each and every week, Tuesday morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. It'll hit your mailbox. But I got this from you, Kia. You have to have a list. I mean, I have to amend an answer. That's what I would have done differently, even more than the networking, which kind of tied to networking. Building my freaking list earlier is what I would have done differently. So they kind of go hand in hand. But like, you're all about lists. I'm all about lists. You have to be, right? So the bigger your list, the bigger your professional success can be if you stay in touch with them. And that'd be my best stuff, I feel like. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I encourage listeners to do that. Reach out to Chris, get on his list. His email newsletter is one of the few that actually read to the end. I really do. So, so thank you for that. Again, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. And thank you to the listeners who's listened. If you've made it this far, and I hope that you have, for tuning in. Again, my name is Kia Arian, reminding you once again that your skills, your talents have been given to you for a reason. There are people who stand to benefit from what you offer, and others who you're not called to help. Focus on the former group. They're waiting for you.
If you enjoyed this broadcast, subscribe to the show, connect with Kia on LinkedIn, and let her know what inspired you. This broadcast was brought to you by Zine, a marketing and brand development agency that helps attorneys, entrepreneurs, and professional service providers create raving clients who love them, stay with them, and tell others about them. Visit zinemarketing.com/newsletter to sign up and receive the Breathe Life newsletter, a print publication of Zine.